Hi, and welcome to my channel. I am so excited to chat with you guys today about a series that is very near and dear to my heart, and I've been doing a lot of reading and talking lately about Sarah J. Maas books, and they are very dense for so many reasons. So I kind of wanted to talk about a book that isn't quite as dense and has more of like vibes and feels as opposed to like really intense plots, political things, stuff like that. So today I'm going to do an overview of the Once Upon a Broken Heart series by Stephanie Garber. I happen to have I think this is called the Waterstones editions. Look, these books are gorgeous. This is book one, this is book two, and this is book three. Like all of these books, even like the back, like they have the fun quotes on the back. And they're like all so stinking beautiful, and the story itself is, I just think, so fun and vibesy. So I'm going to be chatting about this today. This is not, I will have spoilers at the end, but I'm going to go just a very general brief plot overview and then like my feelings, whether or not I like it. Spoiler alert, I do. I do like it. What my rating is, a spice level, some general things that I really enjoy, and like why I think, if you like these kinds of things, then I think you'd like this book. If you don't like these things, you might not like this book, that kind of stuff. And then I'll end with a couple spoilers to kind of, complete why it's not a perfect 5-star, where some of the shortcomings definitely are. But yeah, I am so excited, and let's dive on in. Okay, so Once Upon a Broken Heart. So I just can't get over how stunning these are. This is what they look like in the United States, by the way, because this is the UK edition, these ones. This is the United States edition. This is the Barnes & Noble Special Edition. I believe the regular version is black, so it still has like this pink stuff, but the book is black, and I think this is like a gold color. So if you're if you're watching this in the United States, you will not find these in stores. This is what the book will look like, the series will look like, and they all are very reminiscent of this feel. I actually have some of them back here on my bookshelf as well. So this series is very whimsical and like very classic fairy tale. This is by the author Stephanie Garber. So she wrote another series it's the Caraval series, which is also right behind me. I just love the books. Her covers are always, I think, stunning. So they're my little art on my shelf when my shelf isn't quite as sad, when it looks nicer. I need to get bookends because otherwise they like fall off. Anyway, we're getting off track here. Once Upon a Broken Heart. Stephanie Garber, so her first series, I love her. She hasn't written a ton. She's only written 2 series, and she recently announced her next book, which is going to be like a holiday novella, which a lot of authors are starting to do. And by that, like if you read ACOTAR, it's like Court of Frost and Starlight, where it's a shorter book. Plot-wise, not much happens. It's more like day in the life kind of feel. That's what I mean. So she's writing a novella that follows the Caraval storyline. So Caraval, it's about like this magical circus type of thing. We meet lots of characters. We get introduced to this like world of magic. And then Once Upon a Broken Heart features a villain. It has like a similar like there's a villain who appears in book 2 of the Caraval series. His name is Jax. He is a villain throughout the book 2 and book 3 of the Caraval series. And then he is also a main character in this series, but it's a situation where you certainly don't have to read Caraval first. I actually didn't read Caraval first. I wasn't that intrigued by Caraval when I read the back of the book, and I was more intrigued by this one. So I actually read books 1 and 2 of this series before Caraval, and I didn't feel like I did it wrong. Stephanie Garber does a really good job of knowing people aren't going to necessarily have read Caraval, and so the pieces of information that you need to know about the world or the history or the things that happened in Caraval, specifically with one of our main characters, Jax, she very well fills you in on in this series. So don't feel like you have to read Caraval in order to enjoy it. And if you're planning on reading Caraval, you don't have to read it first. You can definitely read it after. I think it would be interesting reading Caraval first before going into this, because you may have a very different perspective and feel of Jax, because Jax is a fascinating character. So before I get into Jax specifically, I'll kind of give you an overview as to what this is about. So this book is about our dear little Evangeline Fox. I think she's 17. This is one of the reasons why it's not a perfect 5 for me. It is a young adult book, so I will say that. So it is a little bit more on the younger side, writing style. And again, our main heroine, she's 17 years old. I just want them, even in a young adult book, I think you can age the characters up a little bit, but alas, she is quite young. Evangeline Fox, she is just so enthralled by magic, and of course there's like some magic in the world. Her father owns this like oddities shop, where like, things from all around the world have come and they're like magical. There's like this magic bell outside the shop, and she has this like rose gold hair. I don't think it's as bright as bubblegum pink, but it's like a blonde rose gold is kind of how I envision. I actually kind of envision it very similar to like this color, so not super bright pink, but I think this is kind of similar to what her hair is supposed to look like. But her, we meet her. Her father has passed away, and it's now just her and her stepsisters and her stepmother, and she has fallen in love with this boy named Luke. And so the book opens with she finds out that Luke, just out of the blue, has like engaged to her stepsister Marisol, and Evangeline is like, he must be under a curse. It's kind of like, it's not like Cinderella, like evil stepmother, but it's definitely like stepmother does not like stepdaughter. Stepsisters and stepdaughter, they don't necessarily get along, and it's not stepsisters, it's just one. It's just Marisol is her stepsister. And so Evangeline's like, I need to do whatever I need to do to break the curse on Luke because he's my true love. And so in this world, you have these people called fates, and they have powers. Jax is a fate, and he is the Prince of Hearts. His story is that and his kiss is lethal to all but his one true love, and he is just constantly in search of his one true love, constantly killing women along the way with his deadly kiss. So she goes to his temple. She's able to access it, even though it's like locked, and you really shouldn't be able to access it. That comes into play later. But Stephanie does a really good job, I will say, in terms of in book 1 setting up some nuggets of gold to like really reveal who characters really are, their importance. There's definitely a lot of prophecy type stuff. So she does a really good job at setting that up from the beginning, and it's very, very well done, I would say. But so she goes to his church to pray to him and is like, please stop the wedding. And he shows up and he's like laughing at her. He, by the way, if you have read Caraval, he clearly, you can tell where he came from. So it's interesting because this part of the plot is kind of in parallel with what's happening in Caraval. Again, you don't have to read it first. He like mocks her and like laughs at her, and he's like, fine, I'll make a deal. I will stop the wedding, but you owe me 3 kisses. And she's like, because obviously she can't kiss him. 1, she doesn't want to because she's in love with Luke, and 2, because his kiss is deadly. And he's like, relax, you don't have to kiss me. So she agrees. They like, I can't remember what goes into the binding bargain, so to speak, but she ends up having 3 broken heart tattoos on her wrist, which represent the 3 kisses. And then he goes to stop the wedding, and his way of stopping the wedding is getting another powerful fate to poison everyone at the wedding. So he didn't. So she shows up and she's like, what happened? You turned everyone to stone. And he's like, yeah, you wanted me to stop the wedding, so I stopped the wedding. She realizes that she can undo it if she takes a sip. If she like drinks from the chalice they all drank from, she turns to stone and they won't. And he's like, Jax is like, don't do that. And she does. And so then she turns to stone, and everyone else is free. And that's where the book starts. And then, she eventually gets the curse is broken. It's kind of unclear really what happened, but while she was in stone, the fates it kind of fills in what happened in the Caravel series. And she finds out that Luke is gone. Luke and Maricel didn't get remarried. Maricel's like heartbroken over the situation. Evangeline is heartbroken, and she's just kind of looking for a fresh start. But she's like seen as this hero when she wakes up because she turned herself to stone to save the wedding party, even though she kind of caused it. So she's like really battling with this. And then she's like really struggling with life in that feel, and she just kind of needs a fresh start, right? And so she's offered the chance to go to a neighboring kingdom, because there's this neighboring kingdom, the Magnificent North. They're having, it's called the Nacht Never Ending, and it's essentially Prince Apollo over there is picking a bride. And so she is chosen to be kind of the ambassador because of the Magnificent North, because, she's like famous, really well known. The princesses don't want to go there for reasons that you would discover if you read Caravel. So then she ends up going over to the Magnificent North, and she happens to bring her stepsister Maricel over with her. And then that's really where it starts. So I just gave quite a bit of plot, but that kind of really sets it up. And the thing is it really moves. And I like to kind of talk through some of this because you're kind of like wanting it to slow down and be like, can we just get a little bit more reasoning and explanation here? Like, nope, we're just accepting this. We're just accepting this is how it's going, and she's just moving forward. So it moves, and you're like, we're not questioning these decisions. We're not really trying to figure out why. No, we're just going with it. Okay. And then while she's there, of course, she meets Jax. Again, he's there, and he claims a kiss, and the kiss is to kiss the prince. She kisses the prince, and the prince like falls in love with her, and then like is like, you're gonna be my true love. And Evangeline's like, I don't know if I want this, but it's kind of exciting, because deep down what Evangeline wants is true love. Like, that's like her goal. She's like, I just want love. Her parents were madly in love, and she just wants to replicate that. And then the prince is like poisoned, and then she's framed for it. And that's really all I can tell you. So that's like the setup of the plot. And so, she kind of has to team up with Jax to clear her name, to clear his name, to kind of figure out what's going on. She's pulled into a prophecy, and Jax is like manipulating her. There's other characters that come into play. Chaos is a vampire, and he's a really fun character. Lala, she's another magical fate who has like these really cool powers as well. And so she's just kind of pulled along for the journey to try to save Apollo, to try to clear her name. And then throughout as their journey goes on, there are more curses that come into play that affect her, and she keeps trying to escape Jax, and then keeps kind of getting lassoed back in with him. And like Jax is a villain, right? But he, she keeps trying to see the good in him, and then he keeps showing her why he's not good. But that's really all I can tell you without spoiling much of the plot. It's just like one long journey of her just kind of getting thrown around in the Magnificent North, trying to stay alive, trying to solve what's going on around her. Yeah, that's it for the plot. But what I will say is just kind of going more overview why I love these books. So they are so whimsical. The writing is whimsical. It's such a classic fairy tale. Just the way Stephanie Garber writes, it's so fun, and it makes me so happy. When I think of these books, I think of the color bubblegum pink. For some reason, it's not because the book is that color. It's just because of her writing style. Like when Evangeline shows up in the Magnificent North for the first time, you've got baby dragons firing up like roasted caramel apples, like just on the streets. You've got spell books, you've got enchanted forests, you have so much like longing, like the love story throughout these 3 books. There's actually 3 potential love interests, and it's not like one per book, but you have, this isn't spoiling anything, it's very clear, you have Luke, her original boyfriend, is a love interest throughout the series. You have Jax, who she's constantly paired with, and he's just an awful human being, and he's already kissed his one true love, which is not a spoiler because we know that very early on. And then you have Apollo, who is the prince. And it's just, the writing is incredible. I did actually pull up, I did save some notes on my Kindle to kind of like give you what I mean by like, I just love her writing style, and everything just has this very fairy tale-esque feel. Like here's a quote that I highlighted. The coach stopped as it reached the spires. To Evangeline, the twisting towers of flats and shops looked like stacks of snow-dusted fairy tales. Then her mother would smile, sweet, warm as fresh sugar pie. Lala's flat actually felt like the sort of home that unbidden laughter might float out of. There is something in here that actually talks about bubblegum pink, and I couldn't find the quote. It's just like the verbiage that she uses, like crumpled paper, just like it really evokes a lot of senses and nostalgia, I would say. Like you can really feel it, but it also really like it really just feels fairy tale-esque, and I really love that because I know I read a lot of high fantasy, a lot of fae or like vampire or any kind of creature like that, I guess I would say. And this is so unique. This is like very classic, like Disney-esque fairy tale, I would say. The world is really fun. Like I said, enchanted forests. There's like tournaments. There are curses, lots of curses, prophecies. And it's just so fun. And one of the things that I find so endearing about these books is that, again, being a fantasy romance reader that I am, a lot of the female main characters are these like super young girls who can kick ass and just like, they grew up poor, not eating anything, but yet they can shoot an arrow perfectly or wield a sword like it's nothing and they save the day. Where in this series, poor Evangeline Fox, like she has no special talents. She's special because she's wonderful, but she's not this skilled warrior. She's only 17 and she is literally just trying to make the best decisions with the limited knowledge that she has. And you spend a lot of time with her trying to figure out, okay, is this okay? I'm not sure. Am I being manipulated? Maybe I am, but maybe I'm not. But if I'm not, then it could be this. But if it's that, then it's like she's just trying to survive and trying to make the best out of this whirlwind situation. Because, ever since she made a deal with Jax in the beginning, things have naturally occurred to kind of pull her towards him because that's just what happens when you make a bargain with a fate. And her life just feels completely out of control. And it's really endearing. I think the decisions that she makes, I think the ending, it's so beautifully done in terms of how her story in particular concludes, in terms of her desire for happily ever after. Like there's another quote in here about happily ever afters being fleeting, and every story has the chance for infinite endings, and it is just like what happens after happily ever after, and like a lot of those like questions and things are addressed in these books, and just so well done. I love Evangeline as the heroine. I love Jax as one of our main characters. I also love Apollo. The third book in the series, A Curse for True Love, the main quote is like, may the best villain win, because in this book, you even like all three love interests are in this book to some extent, but Jax and Apollo are both villains and they are both like fighting for her, and it's such an interesting read because you're like, man, they're both pretty bad, but I guess I want this. So the author Stephanie does a really good job of getting you to fall in love with the bad guy. And I know this is a really common theme right now in fantasy romance, but the villains in these books are very different than the villains in like ACOTAR. I use this as an example all the time because a lot of people have read it. Rhysand, you think he's a villain, but he's actually, he's got these redeeming qualities. Or Castile from Blood and Ash, like, you think he's a villain, but like there's always this thing, right? Villain, but actually it turns out he's not really a villain. No, the characters in these books really are villains and truly are morally gray and own it. And they're like, yeah, I warned you. I told you I'm not great. And I really enjoy it. And it's such an interesting thing because you have this super hopeful, romantic, just like positive, bubbly Evangeline Fox, like surrounded by these like bad people. And it's so fun. My favorite book in the series. So I'll kind of go through each book a little bit too. I'm not going to talk about too much about plot with each because major spoilers. So book one, I really enjoyed this book. I thought it definitely brought me in, but it wasn't the best. And I think the reason why is, what I kind of talked about earlier, like it moves a little too much for me. Like we're just supposed to accept the fact that within like the first 100 pages of the book, she's stopped the wedding, she's stoned, she's free of stone, she's in the north, she's found Jax, she's been kissed, she's now the princess, they're married. Like you just have to accept that. And none of that is spoilers. Like that is all very much like written out. It's really what happens after that. But you just have to accept a lot as a reader. And I think that's where the young adult really comes into this book, is the fact that it's hard sometimes to accept how much plot happens in the movement without all the detail and backstory to it. And sometimes like the plot isn't the strength. I think the plot throughout all three books is really enjoyable, but what's enjoyable is the yearning between the different main characters and the banter back and forth, and just the situations they're put in and how the different characters handle it. That's what's fun. And so it doesn't need to have the best plot in the world for me to like a book, and that's kind of what these books are. And the plot is fun and it's good. You just have to accept the fact that it feels a little off because a lot is happening and it's a lot to digest, and the characters are just like, okay, cool. There's a lot of just acceptance and we're just moving on, especially with this book. Like this book, a lot happens and I'm like, this is so weird. You're queen now. Like you're literally queen. Like I started the book an hour ago and you're already queen. So it's interesting. And then Ballad of Never After. This is one of my favorite books of all time. And this is definitely 5 out of 5 stars. I think I gave Once Upon a Broken Heart 4, because it was just so fun and different, especially refreshing as someone who's reading a lot of high fantasy. Ballad of Never After is one of my favorite books. And then I love this, Not Every Love is Meant to Be, because this is where like she's finally kind of realizing where her heart lies, who's good, who's bad, and who's redeemable and why, and like, can I love someone who's bad if they're not bad to me? Like this is where she's really breaking down that classic like happily ever after Prince Charming type of feel and coming to her own conclusions. This also is where we see a lot of character development with our other we see a lot of character development with Jax in this one. We see a lot of character development with Apollo in another book, and then Lucian, Luke is his name. We see a lot of character development with him in this book as well. But it's the longing in this book is so good. I mean, like, clearly, like, Jax is one of the main love interests. And the thing is that he's already kissed his one true love. If he kisses Evangeline Fox, she will die. And we know that from page 1. And so it's just so interesting seeing how they interact and knowing this, and the way he treats her is so bizarre, and just like there's just all this yearning. And then same with like Luke, because Luke comes back in this one and it really becomes confusing for her, while she's also married. Like she's also married in this book. So just so much happens in terms of yearning and relationships, and the ending has one of the most painful cliffhangers I've ever read. And I made the mistake of reading this. I picked up Once Upon a Broken Heart and read it, and then this came out a month after, and I had no idea going into this that the third book wasn't even in development yet. And so I read this book, and I'm like in emotional turmoil at the end, and I realized I had to wait a year. I waited a year for Curse for True Love. So yeah, that was hard, but this is literally one of the best books I've ever read. Not for the plot, although the plot is so fun. So many things happen. We've got balls with costumes and ball gowns and lots of running and jumping off cliffs. And there's themes and scenes in this that kind of give me like Princess Bride vibes too, I would say. And then we get to Curse for True Love, which was the last book. And so this is why I give the series in total like 3.75 to 4 out of 5. And actually for me it's a 4 out of 5, but I think for most people, a true rating, I would say that this is like a 3.75, really close to a 4 as a series as a whole. Not just this book, as a series as a whole. Because I give Once Upon a Broken Heart a 4. I think it's so fun. And if you can get past the young adult feel of it, Ballad is a solid 5. This is a 3. This really brought it down, and I was so disappointed in this book. I loved it still because at the end of the day, we got the ending we wanted. She wrote herself into a hole with Caravel, with like the backstory of Jax and like him having already kissed his one true love, and he's one of Evangeline's potential love interests. So she wrote herself into a hole. So we always knew going into this book, we always knew Evangeline would die if her and Jax kiss, and like she can't really actually choose Jax kind of thing. And given all of that, I thought the author did the best job she could, given the fact that that had already been like a predetermined thing. My problem is that she did actually come out and say she like had to rewrite the book, and the book got delayed, I think, a month, and she rewrote a huge portion of it. And I don't know what, I wish I could see maybe what the original version was, because this just kind of like I was talking with the first one where you just have to accept that it moves. This moves, but there's like gaps that don't make sense. Like, for example, there's a character that isn't allowed to leave where this character is, but then in the next chapter, it's totally okay if that character leaves. Like, the intention behind some of the characters just doesn't quite make sense, I would say. And we're also introduced to other characters that really don't pop up again, or like we spend time meeting new people and things happening that then never come back. So a perfect example is a character in this book has a vial of their blood drawn to try to figure something out. The vial never comes up again. Like, it's just strange. There's another character in this book who's like, call me if you need anything, and then that's it. There's new characters introduced that really don't fully feel fleshed out, but then are used as major plot points. And so it's kind of weird. It's like, oh, you used a character who's brand new, who you really rushed through their story to kind of help us through the conclusion. So ultimately, because we got the ending I think we deserved in this book, I still enjoyed it, but I just felt like it was so rushed. I actually feel like this needed another 50 to 100 pages. Like, it's a small book and it's got larger font. I think this needed another 50 to 100 pages to really make it feel full and complete, because it felt really rushed. And I don't know if she was also so excited about her next project. She was just trying to get through this. I'm not sure, but it really did fall flat. And I was so disappointed because Ballad was so incredible. One thing I did enjoy about this one is we get multiple points of view in this one. We might in the other ones slightly. We do. In a couple ones in Ballad, we do get like towards the end, we get a little bit of multiple point of view. And I loved that. There was like a lot of contention about whether or not the multiple point of view worked in this book. And I absolutely loved it. This also had a book of one of my least favorite tropes of all time, which I won't say because it'll kind of spoil it. And so that I knew going into it that I was going to have a hard time. And luckily, the multiple point of view really helped with that. And it was fun getting to see things because, like, obviously, may the best villain win. We start seeing things from the villain's point of view, where throughout the whole rest of the series, we're seeing things really just through Evangeline. So it is interesting seeing their thoughts. And I actually really enjoyed that. And I thought it made it refreshing from the other books and really brought some good depth to it. But it wasn't enough. I really think it needed, like I said, 50 to 100 more pages to have some of these random plot points make more sense, develop some of these new characters better. And then I think it would have been such a strong book. And even the ending felt rushed. Like, she got to the ending really quick, and I felt like she really should have drawn that out a little bit more. And so I think it might have had to do with needing to meet a writing deadline. I mean, that's what happens when you work with publishers. Like, you got a deadline, they're going to have a say in how it's written and things that you do. So I'm just not sure. But at the end of the day, I was really happy with how the story concluded. I was not happy how we got there with this book. So that's why in total, my rating is it's a 4 out of 5. But I think in reality, it's more of like a 3.75 series because the first book makes it hard to get into. It's a little too young adult. And then the third book is I think it's just disappointing. And it's hard because if Ballad wasn't so good and didn't have such an intense cliffhanger, I don't think you would have such expectations for this last book. But because of that, it really just brought it down. So again, for me, it's a solid 4. It's one of my favorite books of all time is in this series. I will never stop praising The Ballad of Never After. I compare a lot of books to it, and a lot of love stories in books to The Ballad. But it's sandwiched between books that aren't as great. And it's actually funny because in the Caraval series, I think Legendary, book 2, which you can see up there, book 2 is the strongest of the 3. So there's something about her middle books that are just so incredible. But that is it. So ultimately, I give it a 4. It's probably closer to 3.75 in general. I do want to point out, like, it is young adult. So if you really need something with a lot more density to it, and a lot more political intrigue, also spice, if you need spice, there's no spice in this. There's so much yearning, and there's definitely some mature situations, but there's no spice in it. So if you're someone who needs that or likes that, I don't think you would feel fulfilled by this. If you're also someone who really likes the traditional, like, fae or elf or vampire magic, I don't know, because the magic in this one's a little strange. It's wonderful, but it's weird. Like, the fates, like, Jack started out as being in a deck of cards. Like, he was in a deck of cards. Weird. Interesting. Very interesting, but a little strange. So yes, if you like dense plots, like if plot is super important to you, I think you will find this lacking. If you're someone who really enjoys, like, the yearning and just the relationship dynamic, and that's your main thing, I think you'll love these characters a lot, especially if you are really into, like, the villain and morally gray. I think you would really, really enjoy these. Also, if you like where the female main character is a little bit more relatable and not a total badass who's just like a normal woman or girl because she's 17, I also think that you would really enjoy this because it definitely checks those boxes. Okay, so now super quick with spoilers. You have been warned. Spoilers in 3, 2, 1. Spoilers. Okay, so my biggest issue with this book is the fact that she wrote herself into a hole. We know Jax and Evangeline can't kiss. And then she writes us out of it in a way where she uses Aurora to be like, yeah, I cursed Jax, but the Northern story thing made it so that way the curse wasn't quite translated correctly, and it's not that he can only kiss his one true love, it's that his kiss is only lethal to those who could never love him. So Evangeline, since you could love him, it will kill you because of that. So, like, it makes Evangeline his love, but I don't like it because it's very clearly stated early on in the books, like, yes, there's this curse, this story curse, writes that way stories keep changing, and it's sometimes you can't vocalize things, but those directly involved, no. Like, Chaos is a main character, Jax is a main character that were around before the story curse happened, and so they know the truth. They can't always vocalize it, but truths that they're aware of, they know. And so for Jax to not know his true curse, I have a really hard time accepting that. Like, I don't think that was the best way around it. I also really didn't like the whole Aurora gets Jack's second heart and then 10 pages later he steals it back from her again. Like, it moved too fast. And then, I hate the amnesia trope. I really do, because I feel like it's such a cop out, and we have to spend so much time relearning and living things through the character's eyes. It's so effective as a cliffhanger. Like, that's one of the reasons why Ballad was so painful, because the way it was done, the way Apollo took her memories was so painful. But then it was rough. So it did save it for me that there was multiple points of view. I would really wanted Apollo to be more than what he was. Like, she was definitely leaving nuggets that he was potentially Lysander. Because also, we never met his parents. Like, I was thinking he had been ruling the whole time and kind of wiping people's memories. And so no one really kept realizing that he'd ruled for like 200 or so years, right? But then he just ended up being a normal guy. And like, what the heck? Where are your parents? Like, it just fell a little flat for me. And again, it's all comes down to the third book, where I felt like things were rushed, not quite thought through. She left a lot of golden nuggets along the way where she could have really made an impact in other ways that just, she didn't use them. And instead, she took the time to introduce, like, this group who was hunting down Jax and took her blood, but then never did anything with it. Or, like, Kinslinger, or whatever the gossip columnist is, was, like, brought in at book 3, never saw him again. A lot of people had issues with the fact that Jax and Evangeline weren't all together a lot in Curse of True Love. That didn't bother me at all. I actually thought that separation really added to the plot, and it really helped Jax develop as a character, and it made it so much better when they were finally together in certain situations. I actually thought that was a super mega strength of the third book. So again, the thing that brings it down for me is the ending, because ultimately I wanted them to end up together, and I really enjoyed that they are. And I did like the tree that like sucked Apollo, and like I like that, and I like how the Valors are kind of back on top now. And I liked how she got her like happily ever after type of situation without being a princess, and like this weird kind of unique situation. I really liked that there's some potential for other books with chaos. And Lala, I really like them as characters. And I think that that'd be another fun storyline to write. And Stephanie Garber always talks about how she writes in other stories potentially for her to do. So that way she always has more to write. So I think that would be really fun. So yeah, spoilers is just the end. All those kind of end pieces just really didn't sit well with me. I also, I felt like Marisol was such a fun character. She was someone you loved to hate then eventually, and you were like never quite sure if she was good. And then she was just gone. And it's not that I wanted to see her again in the end, but like there could have been more. Like she went running from Luke when he was a vampire, and then that was it. And I kind of feel, and then Luke just, because he was like being hunted by Apollo, we just didn't see him again. And I just felt like she had done such a great job writing these characters that made it very upset, made it really interesting and lively for them to just be gone. And for book 3 to be focused on these new characters, I was like, it was a little painful. Like I almost wish it was a 4-book series, so that way we could get the new characters, and then the last book would be bringing it all together. I thought was interesting with book 3 is book 3 felt like what book 2 would be if book 2 never happened. So like if Apollo never was cursed or like half dead kind of situation, and they just got married, right? That's kind of what it would have looked like, right? She just would have gone into princess life. So I thought that actually was really well done, because it did make sense. Like the interactions Evangeline was having made a lot of sense. The problem is that a reader, as much as that made sense, that's not what I wanted. So yes, I did. The one thing I really liked about Apollo is I liked how Stephanie explained his obsession with Evangeline and how it was kind of left. He was so obsessed with her because of the Archer's curse. It just made sense that he would naturally kind of fall for her in this really weird way. And I felt like it really fit his personality. It fit the vibe of the book. And I thought she did a really brilliant job writing that, because it was really clear from the get-go that he only fell for her because of Jack's kiss type of situation. And I thought she did a really good job making it make sense for him to want her. So I really applaud her. I thought she really wrapped that up well. But ultimately, I just thought books 1 and 2, she had this, it was going really good, only for it to kind of, like a roller coaster that gets really exciting, only for it to not be that exciting. But ultimately, yeah, so I would love to know your thoughts on these books. Because if you stayed through the spoiler, hopefully that means you will have read them. So yes, please feel free to message me, Morgan in Bookland, on Instagram. Leave comments. Just try no spoilers in the comments, please. But yeah, thank you for hanging in here with me. And again, if you are as obsessed with these covers as I am, these are the English Waterstones edition. I Am in America, and I ordered them. Price-wise, actually weren't that bad. They're so beautiful. Like, look too, like even this, like they are so well done. I highly recommend, because these are like such the most beautiful things for a bookshelf. So stinking stunning. But anyway, thanks for hanging in there with me. I think my next video is gonna be like book suggestions. If you like some of these like really popular fantasy romance books, like more indie suggestions for popular books, I'm really excited to do that. So stay tuned next week.